Hi, everybody. Welcome to our next episode of Future Focus CXOs. I have a very special guest today, Brandon Taylor. He's the Chief Revenue Officer of Food Chain IT. So, Brandon, welcome to the show.
Absolutely. Thank you for the intro. My name is Brandon Taylor. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer of Food Chain ID. Our mission is to drive transparency, safety, and sustainability in the global food supply. Honorable mission. It was an opportunity for me to align my passion for scale and growth with a purpose-driven organization. That's why I'm excited to be here.
Can you give us a quick rundown of your work experience? How did you get to Food Chain? What led to the CRO position?
Sure. It's interesting. When I first got out of college, I worked for Morgan Stanley as a stockbroker for a couple of years in New York City. I quickly learned that's probably not the best fit for me long-term. So I got a job in selling for Dell, and I took about an 8-year run at Dell, inside, outside, managing transactional, managing relationship, and ended up running the East Coast region, the channel partnership division, and scaled it to 350 million over a period of 3 years from scratch. It was a great run. Me coming out of college, I'm like, wow, this is what it's like, right? Success. I work at this Fortune 15 company and out there making big things happen. But I got to tell you, when you do that, you travel. I was traveling in the East Coast 12 out of 13 weeks for 3 years. How the quarter system works, so you're 13 weeks in a quarter. If you weren't traveling, you are working. After a while, you just get a little bit of a burnout because you're traveling so much and working so much. But I got to a point where I'm building a great business, won Manager of the Year 2 years in a row amongst about 100 leaders. It was remarkable to win it 2 years in a row in the same space, but it happened because big things were happening. I built out the right team and I put the right people in place and the systems and the processes, and we scaled in a big way. So from a career perspective, I thought that was going to be the pinnacle, right? I'm at this large public company making big things happen. And now after getting to a point where I was a little burned out, I got a recruiting call in Austin, Texas, about coming to a $6 million SaaS company that was in oil and gas. So you have SaaS, you have oil and gas, you have Austin, Texas. All those things do not even match, right? Oil and gas in Austin, Texas, it just didn't seem, I was like, surely it's a prank call, but it wasn't. I connected with the CEO and I got a feel for, gosh, this is an opportunity to not only come in from the ground up, but to be a shareholder, to go and raise equity, much different than a large public company, right? So large public company, what I learned was how to drive results, because you basically had access to marketing, you had compensation committee, you essentially have everything you need. You just have to drive results. I brought that. If you think about it, they were recruiting me because they felt like I was a sales expert, right? Because I built this $350 million business and I agreed with them. I'm a sales expert. Like they said it, I said it. Now we're all on the same page. Right up until the first 6 months on the job of a $6 million growth company that didn't have anything in place, I genuinely thought, wow, did I make a mistake? There weren't even job descriptions. The CRM wasn't launched. There weren't, sales structure, recruiting. And they hired me in as a VP of sales. I reported into the board, but very quickly I realized that I wasn't the expert that I thought I was. I was an expert in maybe a large public company where you have all these resources. Now all of a sudden the resources are constrained, right? I don't have resources. What I have is a $6 million of SaaS recurring base of revenue. It's like, now go, right? Had 3 or 4 college interns that were doing the selling and a couple of really senior folks that knew the industry. And this is where my real skill developed in this world. I felt pretty honored and privileged to be a part of a large public company doing great things, but this is where it really tested my resolve, because I realized that I didn't have the right people. The people that get it from 0 to 6 million are typically not the people to get it from 6 to 25 or 50 or 100. So there had to be a little bit of change management. The first thing, I think over a period, and you ask about my career, and I'll give you a little more details in this, but what happened is after about 6 months, I was like, wow, did I make a mistake? I committed, I doubled down, I put the right people in place, I put the right processes in place with regards to CRM, compensation, and then the systems to incentivize. And over an 8-year period, scaled it from that 6 million to 100 million. And we exited for just under $1 billion. And so from a career perspective, you asked, like, how did I get to where I am today? Started a large public. I went through, and I was lucky and blessed to be a part of 3 growth phases, that 6 to 20 million, that 20 to 50, and 50 to 100. All of them are different. Many times you need different leadership in each
Yeah.
one of those phases. But I just happened to be there like for the entire time. So I'm like, wow. So I got to a point where I'm like, okay, now I've got this large public company that I've done well. Now I've got this growth company and gone through these growth phases. I feel like I have something unique to offer the market. And I did a couple of other $7 to $20 million runs, but where I left and I went into the market as an outsourced chief revenue officer.
Correct. Yeah.
And I would come in and essentially for 4 years, I would come in. I did this for about 14 companies in 4 different industries. I would evaluate 12 growth drivers. And in those growth drivers, I would high grade the top 5, the ones that would make the most immediate impact to revenue. And then I would work with the CEO and really identify, if you look at these 5, now this is 6 weeks of just questioning and learning about the business. I come up with these 12 growth drivers. I high grade the top 5. And then I meet with the CEO and I'm like, okay, let's talk about these. Based on your tribal knowledge, the knowledge you have, you've been around for a long time, do these resonate? Should we rearrange them? Should we remove some and add some? Most of the time, 3 to 4 of them would always stay without a change. But there are times when the CEO would say, okay, here's one thing you may not know about the business that I know that may be helpful. So we would land on the top 5. Those top 5, we got to a point where on those top 5, it was okay. All right. I would have this conversation with the CEO. Would you like to do this? Take these top 5, go run with it. Would you like your VP of sales to do it? Would you like your executive leadership team to do it? Would you like me to lead it with your team? And 70% of the time, they would want me to lead it with their team. So I basically would partner with the ELT, the executive leadership team. I would look at those top 5 and I would start executing against those top 5 over a 6 to 9 month period. Typically, an engagement was 6 to 12 months. And I did that for about 4 years. And man, now I thought, wow, the pinnacle of my career was the large public company. Now I thought the pinnacle of my career was just the growth company. Now I'm like, man, I've met 40, 50 CEOs and I've worked for probably 14 of them in different industries. And here's what I learned, that in business to business, 75% of the challenges are pretty much the same in scale and growth. And most CEOs will tell you, and I got to tell you, Jay, you may even say this to me about your business. You may say, but our business is different. You know, our business is different. You may not, our business is different. Well, when it comes to scale and growth, you know, it's not so different.
Yeah, but let me step in here and ask you a question of what are those 5 to 6 common challenges you have seen in growing a business?
So the number one challenge, this is the number one, and I've seen this at multiple companies, is the right people. Companies trying to either go on the cheap and not invest the right amount of money in the right kind of people, or they've invested in people that got them to where they are, but they're not the people to get them to the next level. And they just cannot break up, or they can't make changes to that business and say, you know what, we want to promote you into an inside sales manager, or they're not enterprise sellers. They can't sell multi-million-dollar deals, but they can sell well, more on the transactional side. But one is the people, right? So it's getting the right people to do the job that you need in the moment and the month and the year, and knowing that as your company evolves, the people have to evolve. And not all the time will the people evolve with it. And that's a hard thing to deal with as a CEO, because you've been working with this person for 2 years and they've done a great job for you, but they're not the person to take it from 6 million to 25 million. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I realize that. Yeah. And it's very hard conversation. It's hard to even recognize that, including yourself, right? You may not be even the person who brought it here, right? And can you take it to 10x level, right? And you might want to identify or put yourself also as a CEO into that bucket, not just say that this is the team and I can grow it to 100 million, right? So that's absolutely first. What would be the second one?
So when it comes to, I'm going to say process is a broad term, but the process piece of it is so vital. When I think about process, and this is not just about forecasting, but you have to have a sales process that everyone follows to enable us to scale. What I found in lots of companies is that everyone has their path. I do it my way. When it comes to scale, there is no my way. There is the Bolt Today way of selling. This is our process. This is our sales methodology. We speak the same sales language. Here's our sales process. In every phase of that sales process, there's typically a stage gate to get from point A to point B to point C to point D. When I think about process, if we are managing against the same process, the sales process, and we have the same sales language, it enables us to coach, train, and enable the seller. It only happens if you're consistent, and this is our way. And I think people, process, that's like the biggest part. The third one, which is really important, aligning the incentive compensation that is closely aligned with the results you want to drive. So if you get the people, the process, and the systems in a row, and you get those aligned, if you tackle those top three, those are the three that will enable you to scale. Those are the three that will enable you to grow.
Can I interject? I want to ask, so I have seen executives come from large organizations fail in the entrepreneurial space, right? So much so that when I consult with entrepreneurial companies, I'm like, do not hire from Dell. Like, it's not safe. And I have a dozen reasons why that doesn't work. But your journey, you chose to persevere when you came to that realization, oh, I'm not even qualified for this, right? I'm not even ready. I thought I had it all together, and now I don't. So what was it that made you choose to persevere rather to retreat back to a more comfortable position at a competitor of Dell or something like that, and really embrace the challenges?
That's a good question, because I was on the fence. I could go right back into my comfort zone. I had a career path, reporting to Michael Dell within 5 years. It was set. What I think kept me there is when I talk about people and basically hiring the right people, I had basically gone through the process. And by the way, I had many people from Dell coming to me wanting to work at our company. It was a hot SaaS company in Austin, and I wouldn't do it. I would not do it. The journey that I had been on, I'm like, you won't make it. Like 95% of the people from a large company will not make it here. They just will not. So I said no. But what I did do is I had scaled the team up, and I'm really big on building a world-class commercial organization, create that engine, the right people. I'll tell you, I can get the right people on board and not have the right processes and systems, and we'll make it work. But if I have the best processes and systems, but don't have the right people, we will fail. Now, if I have all three, people, process, and systems aligned, then we're enabling us to scale. So I had gone through the process. Your question is what made me persevere? I had invested. I'm big on actively recruiting bench candidates, even when I don't have roles open. I'm having conversations. I'm happy when I'm interviewing 2 people a week, even if I don't have a job open. So I gone through the process of building a bench over a period of 6 to 9 months of people that I thought were going to be the next level at Drilling Info at the company. So during that process, I'm saying to them, when you're hiring passive candidates, this place is better than where you are, and here are the reasons why. We're building a world-class commercial organization. We'd like you to be a part of it. So I'd put my name on the line and recruited people proactively that were happy where they were, and brought on a team that I felt were going to be the next level. They were going to take the company to the next level. Now, that means I put my name on the line with these people down this world-class journey. That's a big part of it. It's like me committing to these people. You leave what you're currently doing. I know you're comfortable and happy to come here, and let's go tackle some of the global energy challenges that we have out there. So I made a commitment to a lot of these sellers and brought them on. When you say, why did I stay? This is progress too. I got the right people on board. I start tackling things that matter. We started going through a funding round where we could raise some money and have more capital to go and hire more people. Then I saw into the future, there was a big push for energy independence. I can't say that I have this like huge passion for oil and gas. It's not really about that. But when you get behind a mission, it's like energy independence is important. When you see what's happening around the globe, around why, when you don't have energy independence, then all of a sudden there's some big challenges. So to answer your question, no, it's around the people, right? I'd committed to these people. I'd recruited these people. I'd brought on the people. I created strong swim lanes, segmentation. We refined the pricing, and I finally got marketing moving in the direction that we wanted. So I could see into the future that, hey, we are managing, measuring, and tracking the right things from marketing, from sales, because we had a good product, right? And that's not always the case. Now we just have to go accelerate our path to growth.
You made a very important point saying that if you have right people on the team, even though you may not have perfect processes and systems in place, you can still make it work. right?
That's
And it all comes down to motivating the team, right? Rallying them towards it. So the question is, how have you achieved motivating such a team to achieve this level of growth? What is the secret sauce behind that?
I'm not really sure exactly where this came from in my skill set. I think it has to do with my time at Dell. I've had some really great managers and some really terrible managers. What I really wanted is someone to give me a path to my career. Like, I didn't know enough. You're new. All you see is I'm selling, and then I have this other opportunity to manage. But what I do with all sellers that report into me, and this is to answer your question, is that I always have them put together a 1-page bullet point 5-year career plan. It doesn't matter if 5 years from now they want to open an oil change place in their local neighborhood, that's fine. If they want to go and get their master's 2 years from now, that's fine. If they want to be the best possible salesperson in the companies or around the globe, that's fine. Or at the company, that's fine too, because it's their career plan. What I do is I put a 5-year career plan in for any seller that's reporting into me. 1-page, bullet points. I want to know the roles you want, the type of roles you want, the type of money you want to make, the skill sets you want to develop over time. I reverse engineer it into today and make today valuable. Where, consider this, imagine they can make money and add to their career, take care of their family. I motivate them for their reasons, because if they don't have a plan, they work for me. But if they have their own plan, they work for themselves.
Wow, my gosh, that's such a valuable insight. I think I'm going to learn this.
Are you doing something unique at Food Chain ID, or is there a reason as you moved through all of these opportunities why you landed where you are now? What's driving that for you? As there's got to be more than just, hey, it's a job. Share with us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so that's a great question. So as an outsourced chief revenue officer, here's what I found myself doing. I would put together the playbook, I would give it to the coach, and the coach would go win the World Cup or the national championship, the Super Bowl. And where would I be? I would be in the stands eating popcorn because I wasn't part of the culture. I wasn't a part of the team. I was that outside consultant that kind of gives you all the plans and the action to take to go win. I got to a point where working on your own as an outsourced chief revenue officer, VP of sales, SVP of sales, is lonely out there. You are the product, right? You're not a part of a culture. You're not building a culture. I knew that after about 4 years of doing this, I was going to do something. And my goal was this. I have a passion for scale and growth. I like to go tackle some of the toughest problems that's preventing you from growing. So I have a system, I have a methodology. Most of the time I can find it quickly, but I wanted to align my passion for scale and growth with a purpose-driven organization. So if I can align my passion for scale and growth with a purpose-driven organization, when I'm working at 5 a.m. or on the weekends or at night, it's not for the board, it's not for money. It's because, hey, I'm really passionate about what I'm doing. I already said that I'm passionate about people. I believe people are the driver, but man, if you can align scale and growth passion with a purpose-driven organization, and when you think about our mission to drive transparency, safety, and sustainability in the global food supply, that is an honorable mission. You go into a grocery store, Steve, you fill up that cart. Not one time did you think this is potentially unsafe. Why? Why do you think that? Because companies like ours, we were the ones that provide the solution around compliance and regulations for Community Coffee, for Pepsi, all these companies, they have to abide by global regulations. And those regulations are different by country. There are many things we can't even sell outside the United States because they don't believe it's healthy enough. An example of Twinkies. Twinkies are big in like America. They're banned. You can't sell them in Europe. So in every country, the regulations are a little bit different. So we have the platform that actually enables that. So compliance, global regulations. And if you consider, when you ask me the question is like, how did I end up here? There was an opportunity. I typically get some of the financial firms reach out to me periodically because they know my background in scale and growth. They reached out to me and it was about food and beverage. And I'm like, food and beverage? I think about Applebee's. I think about Red Lobster. That's what came to my mind. Like, it didn't compute for me. But then once I learned about the mission, learned about the team, I'm like, wow, this is so much bigger than what I was thinking it was. So our company has testing, which is we test for authenticity, and we have a lab, and we have a fair amount of doctors that work for us, really smart food scientists. We have certifications. If you go into a grocery store, you see non-GMO, USDA, you see all those certifications. They're making claims. So we do the certifications and we also do testing, but then we also have our SaaS software platform that helps in global product management and also compliance.
Really cool.
Mhm.
So you talked earlier about reverse engineering, both reverse engineering individuals' goals and plans. How do you balance integrating technology into reverse engineering your process, prioritizing people like with your sales compensation and other areas, and other systems that you're trying to integrate to build a scalable company? How do you balance that technology need to both support and enable what you're trying to accomplish?
So a couple of things come to mind when you ask that question. A sales and commercial perspective, I think about tech stack, right? I think about what are the things that enables to be successful. Are those the types of thing you're talking about, or more like high spot enablement tools, prospecting tools like Zoom Info?
I think it's how are you viewing technology when it comes to figuring out how much weight you have to put on it based on growing budgets, things like that. You're making decisions. It's okay, do I prioritize Zoom Info at this point, or do we have to grow a certain point before it makes sense to optimize and pay for something like that? And if so, what kind of benefit is that going to give my sales team to continue to scale? That kind of thing. So how do you balance the thought process for taking companies as you're trying to move them through scalable growth into the need where you're raising your hand for, I need this technology, I need this solution, I need to spend more money for here, we need to invest. My people can't get their job done, can't solve the problem we're trying to solve without extra X, Y, or Z.
Well, what's interesting is since my background was working in a large public company first, the sky's the limit on budget as long as you're growing. You come into a growth company, you have no budget, so you have to justify everything. So I believe, one, that when I say get the right people on board, we can make a lot happen without the technology. But there is a point, there's this pivotal point where it makes sense to adopt a company like Outreach for sequencing and prospecting. That's just one example. Another example is we have 27 products. I've hired 19 salespeople in 7 months. And when I got here, we didn't have any enablement that I could put my finger on. So if you think about, okay, I've got 27 products, I have no enablement, I'm hiring all these sellers. Hiring sellers does not solve the problem. You hire the sellers, you enable them to be successful, you give them a lane, and then you say, here's your remit. This is what you need to do. We were missing the enablement piece. This is a time within the first 4 months of me coming in, if we only had one product, it'd be different. We have 27 products. So we adopted an enablement tool called HighSpot, which essentially creates a platform for you to build out enablement where there are very specific stage gates that gives you, okay, you learned this about the product. Here's the value proposition. Here are the target market. Here's how you sell it. Here are the questions you ask all the way through it on all 27 products. So the intention was, okay, we adopted the platform. Now let's build it out. So that was a time when I said, okay, I've got the people. Now let's make sure they're enabled correctly. And then next up was going to be a LinkedIn Navigator. Like, what do we have for a prospecting tool? Now I've enabled them, but I've also launched a global prospecting masterclass that I've been running for about 15 weeks. I built it out over my Christmas holidays, mainly because we're running pretty lean. We're running pretty lean. We don't have an enablement manager. We need
your enablement.
Yeah.
I got you. Understand. Totally get that.
So I built it out over the holidays and we launched it at SKO. We had an SKO in Paris and we had an SKO in Tampa, and then reinforced it every week. Wildly successful. We doubled our meeting count in 2 months, in February and March. We've doubled them, which is super exciting. Our pipeline generation has doubled as well in Q1 versus the prior quarter. So we are on the cusp of like really making great things happen. It's super exciting.
This warms my heart as a sales enablement guy. The crazy returns you can get with great training. You're seeing the results. They're like, what are you going to do? And you're like, I just built this masterclass. And then, oh, by the way, I just doubled our pipeline. Yeah. Yeah, that's all. They're like, oh, so your budget obviously is going up in enablement. Sounds like.
Yes. And we've actually hired a person to run enablement at this. So this is an example of us not having the resources, building it ourselves, showing return on investment. and then saying, okay, there is a return on investment. This makes sense. You got to justify it to the board. You justify it to the board. You make it happen. And now we're moving in the direction of empowering our enablement team.
It's awesome.
Brandon, what advice would you give to other aspiring leaders who really want to get to where you are?
Typically, you run into two camps. You run into a camp where a sales leader is really good at selling and they're a little bit of a lone wolf, but they want to go in leadership. Or you got someone that's really just wants to be in management. But in both cases, the number one thing you have to do as a sales leader is manage to your first team, and that's your executive leadership team. They have to believe in you that you've got it. They've got to believe that you have a handle on revenue and growth and a trajectory in the direction the company's headed, and as well as the board. You have to manage the board and the ELT first. They have to be your priority first. It's easy as a sales leader to get consumed with deals, customer meetings, managing new salespeople and onboarding them. All these things take an enormous amount of time, but you can't let it consume you so much that you're not making the board and the ELT a priority. They're the priority first, because if they're comfortable with what you're doing, then you have a future. Right. But if for whatever reason there are reservations, it puts everything at risk. So they've got to believe in your path for growth, the board and the ELT. That's the advice I would say. I'm not saying choose one over the other. I'm just saying if you had 8 hours in a day, make sure that you're investing the right amount of time, ELT and the board.
Excellent. I have learned that lesson both the hard way and the good way over time.
Yeah, that's true. That's why I'm saying it.
Yeah, I find that it's like very few people have either the time, energy, or know-how to be a champion for you. So you have to be able to communicate to them what you're doing, what it's working, why you're going, and why they should support you. It's great if somebody is your champion, like a good boss, as you said. You feel like you have a good boss. I can have a good boss, but a bad champion. I can have a good boss and a good champion. Or I could have a bad boss. Everybody's actively working against, I did this, and they're like, no, I did that.
Very good points, Brandon. See, what I have realized in my life is people fall into two buckets, right? Either they are followers or they are leaders. Even though I have seen a lot of leaders, so-called leaders, titles we see in the companies, they are actually followers. They're following somebody in the company, right? They're just yes, sir type of guys. But there are certain who are truly a leader mentality mindset. They always challenge the status quo. They come up like you sat over a Christmas and come up with a complete enablement plan or training, right? Very few people will do it. They say, it's not my problem. You need to do this, you need to do that, right? That's how people typically address that. And this is a very core leadership skill, saying that, oh, it's my problem, right? I'm going to solve it. I think that, in my opinion, truly differentiates people, because same thing happens with our kids. We keep coaching them, and my son is now 22. So I keep telling him that there are only two types of people, right? So you decide what you want to be and who you are, because it is a learned skill. Yes, you are born with certain kind of leadership skills. I don't undermine that, but 80% of leadership skills can be acquired. You're mindful about them.
Sure.
But thank you. I think this was awesome talking to you. Thank you.
Brandon, thank you.
Any last words you have before we close?
I guess I would reinforce this for future sales leaders. From a sales leadership perspective, it's okay to step in, lean in, and decide it's not for you. I believe that sales leadership's not for everyone. I think there are a ton of demands from the board, from investors, from the executive leadership, from your peers, from all the sellers. They expect you to enable them in a strong way. If you drew a circle around you, the expectations are high, so high that sometimes you can't meet them all. If you looked at my calendar, there are overlapping meetings, basically, and I've got to decide which one's most important in that hour to make an impact, right? All I would say is that it's okay to decide if someone feels like, you know what, this is not the best thing for me or my family. Timing matters, right? That happens, right? I have two boys that are 10 and 12. And what's interesting is I look at them and I'm like, they see their daddy working a ton, right? And there are times when I'm like, wow, I really need to just be spending time with my kids, but I also have board demands. But this is where the passion for scale and growth with a purpose-driven organization comes in. Those two things align. When I look at those two things, then I'll just get up at 4:30 or 5 and do it from 5 to 7, and then go take care of my kids, then plug back in. So that's where when you add everything together, it's possible to do it all. I guess the key takeaway is that the sales leadership is not for everyone. Growth is not for everyone. It's really important to decide who you want to be, what you want to do. And it just happens that where I am in my life, my passion for scale and growth is there, and it's solid. Purpose-driven organization, that's my preference if I'm leading. And I believe you can do that and still be a great father and invest the right amount of time. I believe it. So the walk away is this: just make sure, no matter what, that you have enough balance in your life, that you're taking care of your health and you're connecting with your family while driving the results. Because if you just drive the results, you're going to get burned out, right? Your ability to process things, execute things, to go and drive things, it starts fading away when you don't have the right balance. And I'm guilty. I've done it.
Every one of us is. I've seen my kids growing horizontally, right? Because I come home, they're always sleeping. So I was also traveling 20 days in a month. So I imagine I relate to you, Brandon, how the life is. But you have to do what you have to do for the family, right? Yeah.
And that's it. Just make sure you maintain the right level of balance as you go out against your sales leadership role, and you stay connected. One of the things that I don't see as much when people get stressed is being grateful and thankful for the people that are around you and making sure that you're expressing it. One thing to reinforce is that when sellers, commercial organization, when they're doing things right, make sure you tell them, great job on this call, asking this question. Great job cross-functionally working with the marketing department to find out X. It's just making sure that there's more than just driving results, right? There's this well-rounded machine where you're balanced and you're grateful and you're thankful for the people around you that help be successful.
All right.
Great. Thank you again. Thanks so much. It's very nice talking to you, Brandon.
Nice talking to you guys as well.